My name's William. I'm 33 years old and I've always been the kind of person who remembers birthdays, brings a gift without being asked, and offers to pitch in with the cleanup even if I didn't make the mess in the first place. That kind of effort never really got recognized in my family. I wouldn't say I'm the black sheep exactly. It's more like I'm the one no one sees. I don't start drama, I'm not loud, and I've never had a huge blowout with anyone. But over time I started Williaming the slow, subtle sense that I was being pushed out. It was always little things. Group texts I somehow wasn't part of. Jokes that flew over my head because I hadn't been there when they started. Family pictures that didn't include me even though I'd been at the event just off to the side, probably holding someone's coat or taking the picture. I gave them the benefit of the doubt every time. Told myself they must have just forgotten. I convinced myself it wasn't personal. I clung to that story longer than I probably should have. Some part of me Williamed that if I just kept showing up, stayed kind, kept being useful, they'd eventually acknowledge me again. The hard part about being quietly left out is that no one has to admit it's happening. That way, they can pretend it's all in your head. And honestly, that's the most painful part. No one has to say, you're not welcome here. They just stop including you until you stop expecting the invite. So last month, I went to my nephew Noah's 7th birthday party. He's my sister's kid. I brought him a Lego Star Wars set he'd been talking about nonstop and even helped him build the first half of it. After the party wound down and most of the adults had cleared out, I stayed behind and helped with dishes while my sister scrolled on her phone. It was casual. Light chatter, nothing serious. It actually felt normal. Like maybe things were starting to settle into place again. So when I said, can't wait for the big family dinner tomorrow, looking forward to seeing everyone, I meant it. I truly did. Then Jenna, my cousin, stopped mid-bite of cake and just burst out laughing. Wait, you don't know? That was yesterday. My stomach dropped. I turned toward my aunt, silently hoping this was some weird, unfunny joke. But it wasn't. She didn't miss a beat, just pulled out her phone and opened her photos. There it was, a long table set up in my parents' backyard. Fairy lights strung up, champagne glasses on the table, everyone dressed like it was a holiday. And to make it worse, people I hadn't seen in years were there, extended family who usually don't show up for anything. There were speeches, toasts, kids running around, big group photos. It wasn't some last-minute barbecue, it was the family dinner. The one my mom throws every summer. The one that's basically our version of a family reunion. My aunt started swiping through the pictures like she was showing me shots from a vacation. This one was right before dessert, she said. That's when your mom gave her little speech about how lucky she felt to be surrounded by all her blessings. She slowed down a bit when she said that last part. Like maybe it had just hit her that I shouldn't be hearing it. But the damage was already done. My face went hot. My mouth went dry. And then, out of nowhere, my sister looked up from drying a plate and mumbled, maybe take the hint next time. Just like that. No emotion in her voice. I didn't respond. I didn't move. I just stood there for a few seconds watching her calmly wipe down a tray like she hadn't just carved out my insides with one sentence. The air felt heavy like the whole room had shrunk. I set the sponge down, walked into the living room, picked up the envelope with Noah's birthday card and the gift card I'd quietly slipped in as a surprise, and I left. On the drive home, her words echoed in my head, take the hint. I replayed them over and over. It wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It just sounded tired. Like she'd been waiting a long time for me to catch on. Like I was some oblivious outsider who just couldn't take the message no matter how clear they made it. Like I was holding on to something that had let me go a long time ago. I'll be honest, I cried in the car. Not exactly something I'm proud of, but I'm not ashamed either. It wasn't really about missing the dinner. It was about finally seeing things for what they were. That was the moment it all clicked. I wasn't one of them anymore. I'd become, at best, a box to check. An obligation. I didn't sleep that night. I just stared up at the ceiling, going over all the moments I'd let slide. The time they told me Christmas was just immediate family and then posted pictures with people I barely recognized. The group chats I found out about through screenshots. The birthdays forgotten. The jokes I didn't get because I wasn't in the room when they started. But here's the thing, I'm not the kind of guy who plots revenge. That's not who I am. I don't want to get even. All I wanted, what I needed, was to be done. No more waiting for invitations. No more showing up and hoping it mattered. No more handing out grace like Halloween candy, praying it'd earn me a spot at the table. That night, I started making plans. Not out of spite. Not revenge in the traditional sense. Just something more lasting. Something they wouldn't expect, because let's be honest, they never really noticed me at all. The first move? Financial. Thing is, I've been doing all right these past few years. I work in IT, not rolling in money, but I've made solid choices. I got into real estate and started managing properties. Nobody really asks about my life, so they don't know I now own 3 rental homes. They also don't know I've been quietly helping my parents with things like roof repairs and plumbing problems using anonymous grants I set up through my LLC. I never wanted recognition. I just wanted to take care of them because, well, they're my folks. Or at least, they used to be. A week after Noah's birthday party, my mom called me in a panic. The central air in their house had gone out during the first heat wave of the summer. They said it's going to cost over $8,000 to fix, she said, her voice shaking. The guy you usually deal with said he didn't get the maintenance retainer this year. Did something happen with the fund? I kept calm. Told her straight I'd shut down the grant program. She sounded confused, but I didn't explain. I'm sure you and everyone from the dinner can figure something out, I said. She didn't say a word. Just dead silence on the other end. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. I didn't wait around for her to find a response. I ended the call, polite, clean, final. And that very same afternoon, I called up my lawyer. See, over the years, I'd helped out in more ways than they ever knew. College savings for my niece. Covered emergency dental work for my uncle. Paid for a part-time assistant so my sister could grow her little Etsy shop. I had the receipts for every bit of it. What they never realized was that those funds weren't just free-floating gifts. I'd attached clauses, quiet, legal conditions that could be reversed with a single signature. All it took was me deciding I was done. So I signed. I sent the letters. Froze the accounts. Within 2 weeks, the aftershocks started rolling in. My inbox blew up. Missed calls, voicemails, FaceTime requests. One message from a cousin just read, "What is going on?" I didn't answer a single one. Then the old family group chat lit up. Not the shiny new one they made without me, but the original thread. The one I created 5 years back after Grandpa passed so we could coordinate funeral arrangements. I still had admin privileges. I renamed the chat to maybe take the hint. Then I quietly removed every single person. One by one. No message. No explanation. Just silence. But that was just the warm-up. I still had one last string tying me to all of them. And once I cut that, everything changed. That final thread was the lake house. Technically, it wasn't fully mine. It had belonged to my grandparents, and after they passed, ownership was split. Half went to my mom, the other half to her sister, my Aunt Monica. When Monica passed, her portion was handed down to her daughter, Jenna. Yeah, that Jenna. The same one who laughed when she realized I hadn't been invited to the family dinner. Years ago, when my mom fell behind on her share of the expenses, I quietly stepped in and bought her half. Legally, that gave me 50% ownership. But in the family's mind, nothing had changed. They still acted like it was Grandma's place. Everyone came and went as they pleased, weekends, holidays, entire summers. No one ever asked. No one ever offered anything in return. And me? I never booked it for myself. Not once. I even paid for the new dock last summer. Out of pocket. No credit. No applause. But now? That lake house was a chessboard. And for once I held the first move. I waited until Memorial Day weekend rolled around, the biggest family gathering of the year. It had been tradition for over a decade. Barbecue smoke in the air, kids tossing pebbles into the lake, adults getting loud with cheap drinks while the sun dipped behind the trees. I used to love those weekends. Used to. But I hadn't been invited in 3 years. This time, though, I didn't need an invite. I just needed to show up. 3 days before the weekend kicked off, I filed paperwork that limited shared access to my half of the property. There was a rarely used clause in the deed that allowed either owner to partition access in the event of conflict. My lawyer locked it down airtight. I wasn't banning them. I was just saying, if you want in, we need a co-owner agreement. Formal terms. Clear rules. Naturally, Jenna hadn't read a single piece of her legal mail. She was still operating on old assumptions. Still thinking I was just nice William. Friday morning, I drove up early. Let myself in. Parked my truck sideways across the gravel driveway so no one else could squeeze in behind me. Then I waited. Didn't take long. Around noon, 3 cars showed up. My sister, Jenna, my mom, plus their spouses, and a whole swarm of kids. They were laughing and talking right up until they spotted me. Then it was like someone hit pause. Jenna climbed out first. Her expression tightened. "You're here." I smiled. "Yep. Memorial Day weekend. Thought I'd enjoy the lake." She marched over, arms folded tight across her chest. "Well, we plan to stay the weekend. I already told Mom she gets the master." I stayed calm. "That's going to be an issue." The house is currently locked under co-owner review. You would have seen the notice if you'd opened your mail. She blinked. What notice? My sister piped in, already annoyed. William, seriously? Don't be like this. Just because you weren't invited to one dinner. I held up a hand. It wasn't just one dinner. And this, I added, isn't about the dinner. This is about respect. Something this family stopped giving me a long time ago. That's when my mom finally stepped forward. Her voice was soft, like she was trying not to spook a wild animal. William, sweetheart, we didn't mean to hurt you. Things just got busy, you know how it goes. For a second, I almost be William-ed her. Almost. But then I remembered every time she let my sister's jabs slide. Every time she excused their behavior with a laugh or a gentle nudge for me to be the bigger person over and over again. I do know how it goes, I said. That's why I'm here. This place? It's not a community free-for-all anymore. If you want to keep using it, we draft a new agreement. We share the upkeep. We take turns. I paused. Or we sell. Jenna's voice shot up. You wouldn't dare. You'd blow up years of tradition over what? Some hurt Faye Williamings. I looked her straight in the eye. You already blew up the family. I'm just sorting out the paperwork. They tried everything after that. Yelling. Begging. Throwing guilt like confetti. My mom cried. My sister called me selfish. Jenna threatened legal action. None of it made a dent. I had the files. The contracts. The photos. The deed clause. Years of silence had taught me to document everything. And in that moment, standing there with the lake behind me and 3 decades of rejection in front of me, I finally felt something shift. No more noise. Just clarity. Sharp, necessary, and long overdue. Eventually, they gave up. Tossed a few last words over their shoulders as they walked away. I didn't flinch. I stood there on that old porch until the last car rolled down the gravel path and out of sight. Then I went inside, grabbed a lemonade from the fridge, and sank into Grandma's old rocking chair. That night, I lit a fire in the backyard pit. Watched the flames dance upward, sending sparks into the night sky like the ghost of a forgotten 4th of July. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like I belonged. Not to them. Not to the family. But to somewhere. The last piece? That came the next morning. I wasn't done, not yet. There was one last thing I needed to send. And once they opened it, they'd realize the real fallout hadn't even started. The next morning, I woke up to quiet. Not the usual chaos of kids screaming from the dock, no Bluetooth speakers blasting someone's playlist, no smell of my sister's bacon that somehow always ended up burnt. Just pure stillness. Honestly, it was almost eerie how peaceful it felt. And I loved it. I made myself a strong cup of coffee, walked barefoot down to the lake, and stood there watching the morning mist roll off the water like it was holding secrets I didn't need to carry anymore. I wasn't sad. Just clear. Focused. Resolved. The night before had been a line in the sand. But this morning? This was about making it permanent. Before heading back to the city, I stopped at the little post office in town and handed over a thick manila envelope addressed to our family lawyer. It held the final piece of it all. Inside was my formal decision to sell my half of the lake house. But I wasn't just putting it on the market and hoping for the best. I already had a buyer lined up, a retired couple from out of state. No kids. No chaos. Just 2 quiet people looking for a calm place to spend their summers. I even gave them a slightly sweeter deal if they agreed to one simple condition: put up a fence. Nothing outrageous, just a clear boundary that would legally prevent any accidental visits from extended family who used to treat the place like a free resort. But the envelope didn't just hold the sale contract. On top of everything else, I placed a single, folded letter. 1 page. My goodbye. It wasn't bitter. But it was honest, brutally, surgically honest. I took my time with it. Wrote it over 2 nights, making sure every word was exactly what I meant to say. Here's part of what I wrote. To everyone who forgot me. You may not have realized it, but over time I faded out of this family. Not because I drifted away, but because you slowly, quietly pushed me there. With your exclusions. With the silence. With the smug looks every time I showed up still thinking I mattered. I was the one who helped. The one who gave. The quiet one who always showed up even when no one really noticed. All I ever wanted was a spot at the table. A little warmth. A little effort. But you made it clear. I'm not family, I'm a resource. A backup plan. A punchline. So I'm taking the hint. You won't need to forget to invite me anymore. You won't have to roll your eyes when I walk in or whisper behind my back once I leave the room. I'm stepping away from all of it. I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. I'm just done. This lake house was the last place where I still felt even a shred of connection. But I've let it go now. The couple buying it is kind. Quiet. And don't worry, they won't tolerate uninvited guests, even on holidays. Consider this my official notice. I'm not available anymore for guilt, for gaslighting, or for group chats. I wish you all the best. I really do. But from here on out, my peace comes first. William. 3 days later, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Call after call. Voicemails, texts, first confused, then anxious, and eventually angry. My sister, who hadn't said a kind word to me in over a year, was suddenly full of concern. You're breaking Mom's heart. You're being childish. Jenna sent a novel's worth of texts. Started with, "Are you seriously selling the house?" And ended with, "You'll regret this." But the message that really stayed with me was from my mom. Just one sentence. "Why are you doing this to us?" I stared at it for a long time. I even typed a few replies. Some were blunt. Some were soft. One just said, "Because you let them." But in the end, I erased them all. Because deep down, she already knew. A week later, the sale went through. The couple moved in. The family tried to fight it, but it was too late. Jenna had been ignoring her part of the maintenance taxes for years, and I had the majority rights on the deed thanks to a clever little clause I triggered through my LLC. They had no ground to stand on. It was final. Legally, financially, emotionally. Done. That summer passed without a single text from anyone asking for help. They ended up renting some generic lake Airbnb 2 towns over. I saw the pictures on my cousin's Instagram, different doc, same fake smiles. That same energy of pretending everything's fine. But it wasn't. Because this time, there was no William to call. No silent fixer. No human wallet with emotions, which is what they once called me on a group Zoom when they thought I was muted. And while they scrambled to figure out how to fill the gap, I was busy building something real. A new life. One where I wasn't invisible. I found friends who saw me. People who appreciated what I offered, who laughed with me and never once made me fight for a seat at the table. It was never about revenge. It was about release. But let's be honest, there was one final twist. 2 months after the house sale went through, something interesting landed on my desk at work. My company had launched a new mentorship program, a paid opportunity for folks looking to reboot their careers in IT and project management. We'd opened it up to applicants from all over the region. Guess who applied? Jenna. She had no idea her application would end up on my desk. And she definitely wasn't expecting the sticky note I attached to her rejection letter. 6 words. Simple. Maybe take the hint next time. The weeks that followed were quieter than I expected. No calls. No texts. Just silence. But this time, after years of being silently shut out, the quiet felt mutual. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like it was my job to fix it. I stopped checking their social media. Unsubscribed from the last few leftover family email chains. My phone stayed still. My mind felt clearer than it had in years. But clarity doesn't mean peace is automatic. There were still nights I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd gone too far. If maybe I should have just kept playing the role, being the quiet one, the amiable one. The guy who swallowed his pride so the illusion of a happy family could stay intact. That old guilt, it was familiar. Like a jacket I didn't even realize I was still wearing. Worn in. Broken down. Weirdly comforting in a messed up kind of way. But the more I sat with it, the more I saw it for what it really was, a tool. One people use when they can't control you outright anymore. Letting go of that guilt wasn't easy. But I did it. Because something new was growing in its place. Something steadier. A sense of dignity. Boundaries. This quiet pride that came from finally choosing myself over a group of people who had made it clear I would never be their first choice. Work got better too. I got promoted. Turns out when you're not constantly emotionally wrung out by toxic dynamics, you've got a lot more brain space to thrive. I took the trip to Kyoto I'd been putting off for years. Went alone. Spent 2 full weeks wandering through bamboo forests, sipping matcha on quiet balconies, getting lost in shrines and alleyways. Didn't post a single photo. Didn't tell anyone I was going. I just lived it. Fully. Quietly. For me. The last thread unraveled on Thanksgiving. Usually, it was a whole production at my parents' place, stuffing recipes from grandma's scribbled notes, dad's notoriously dry turkey, and the annual fight about who got to sit closest to the fireplace. If I was invited at all, I was usually banished to the kids' table or stuck in a folding chair by the door. A few years ago, I stopped going. No one really noticed. But this year? Something was different. That morning, I got a knock at my door. It was my father. I hadn't seen him in almost a year. He looked smaller somehow. Older. His hair had gone grayer than I remembered. He was holding a foil-covered dish and his eyes were red, not from crying, I don't think. Just worn. The kind of tired that sits deep in a man's bones when life finally forces him to reckon with his own choices. "Can I come in?" he asked. I didn't say anything. Just stepped aside. He sat at the kitchen table and put the dish down. Didn't explain it. Didn't offer it. Just stared at the grain of the wood like it might hold answers he didn't have. "Your mother's not doing well," he said finally. I nodded. That tends to happen when you lose control over people. He winced. Maybe it was the words. Maybe the way I said them flat, not angry. "She's sorry, William. She says it every day." I poured him a glass of water and sat across from him. She had years to say it to my face. He opened his mouth, probably to push back, but then he stopped. Let out a long, low sigh. "You were right to walk away," he said. That caught me off guard. I didn't see that coming. "I told her we should have handled things differently," he went on. "That we made you feel like a stranger in your own bloodline. I tried talking to your sister. She said you're just being dramatic. That you're holding a grudge." I let out a dry little laugh. Not because it was funny, just because it was so perfectly on brand. Of course she does. She's not doing great either. Her Etsy shop shut down. She's back living with us now. Your mother's under a lot of stress. Then he looked at me. Really looked at me. "I'm not here to guilt you," he said. "I came because I finally figured something out. You didn't abandon the family. We abandoned you. And we got used to the idea that you'd never push back." The silence between us was heavy. Years of it. But something about the way he said it, plain, stripped down, it landed. Then he added, "I read your letter." I raised an eyebrow. "The one you sent to the lawyer," he explained. "He forwarded a copy to me after the house was sold. I read it 3 times. Cried every time. I didn't know what to say." "You're a better man than I ever gave you credit for," he said. "I'm sorry it took losing the house and losing you for me to see that. And I be William ev'd him. I don't know why exactly. But I did." His voice wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't performative. It was just worn down. Honest. I got up, opened the fridge, and pulled out a small pumpkin pie I'd picked up the day before. I sliced 2 pieces and slid one across to him. "No turkey," I said. "But the whipped cream's real." He smiled, just a little. We didn't talk much after that. Just sat and ate. 2 men with too much history and no clear map forward. But it was something. Not a fix. Not forgiveness. But a start. And I made it clear, if things were going to be different, it would be on my terms. No more shrinking myself to fit a family story that never had space for me. No more apologizing for taking up room in my own life. A few days later, a letter arrived in the mail. Handwritten. From my mom. I read it twice. Then tucked it away. I wasn't ready to write back. Maybe I never would be. Forgiveness isn't a switch. It doesn't show up just because someone says, "I'm sorry." It comes with change and time and proof. The weeks rolled on. Winter crept in. And for once I moved through it with a kind of stillness I'd never known before. Not numbness. Not apathy. Peace. Real, earned peace. And then just before Christmas, my phone buzzed. Not my sister. Not Jenna. It was Noah. My nephew. A video message. "Hey Uncle William," he said, grinning, one of his front teeth missing. "Mom says we're not supposed to talk to you, but I think that's dumb. I miss you." He looked off screen, then leaned in like he was telling me a secret. "I'm building another Lego spaceship. It's got 3 engines this time." Behind him, just before the video cut off, I heard my sister's voice snap, "Noah, give me that phone." And then the screen went black. I watched the clip again. And again. Each time, my chest ached, not with anger. Not anymore. Just a deep, quiet sadness. Not for me. I've had time to process my place in all of this. No, this time it was for him. For Noah. For what he was being pulled into without even realizing it. The same pattern. The same quiet cruelty. The same way silence gets used like a weapon. A tool to isolate, to control. He didn't deserve that. So I recorded something in return. "Hey buddy," I said, smiling into the camera. "That spaceship sounds amazing. I bet it's the fastest one in the whole galaxy. I miss you too. And just so you know, I'm always here. No matter what anyone says." I hit send. I never got a reply. But that was all right. I wasn't looking for one. Because I meant it. This was never about revenge. Not really. It was never about trying to hurt them back. It was about ending the hurt they caused me. It was about drawing a line, not to shut people out, but to stop letting them walk over me. It was about building walls, not as punishment, but as protection. And maybe, just maybe, if one person in the next generation sees that, they won't grow up thinking invisibility is something they have to accept. Maybe they'll understand that it's okay to say no. To walk away. To draw a hard line when kindness is met with neglect. To know that love shouldn't be conditional. As for me, I'm good. I bought a new place. Smaller, warmer. A home that actually feels like mine. It's got a fireplace that crackles in winter and a wide front porch that's perfect for summer evenings. I host game nights now. Real ones with laughter and snacks and people who want to be there. I cook dinners that don't come with judgment hidden between bites. I laugh more. I sleep through the night. And when those old photos show up on my phone, you know, the ones from birthdays or holidays where I'm standing at the edge of the frame, smiling just enough, hoping just enough, I don't stare at them anymore. I just swipe past. Not because I'm bitter. Because I'm free.